So there's the surge, and then there's a lot of, things happening, and then it just kind of stops. There's like this dead space. It's a plateau. If you're a generator, you know what this feels like. You know it feels awful, really. I mean, let's be honest about it. We could, try to put a lot of positive thoughts to it up front, but, let's be real here. It doesn't feel good, right? Human design reveals who you are energetically and who you came here to be. I'm Dana, human design specialist.
And I'm Haley, the human design newbie. Listen in as we explore how leaning into your authentic self is your ultimate path to success. Welcome to the Human Design Hive podcast. Let's get into it.
Hello and welcome back to the Human Design Hive podcast. I am ever your host, Dana Phillips, and I have another solo episode for today. And today I thought I'd take the opportunity to talk to you all about generator plateaus, what that is, what it feels like, and really what to do if, as a generator, you find yourself in a plateau. So a good place to start is really with how generators' energy functions. So generators have what is referred to as an enveloping or embracing aura, meaning we are the type that things are more easily attracted to us. Why is that? Well, it's because generators type would be, generators or manifesting generators, have a defined sacral center, and the defined sacral center is the energy center that is the primary motor in the human design system, and it's where the energy for work, life, and sex lives. I mean, if you want to look at it, sex is life force energy, it's creation, it's energy, it's the center that carries this, the sacral center. It's energy that is always present, always sustainable, a replenishing source of energy. It's also referred to, sacral energy is also referred to as what you may be familiar with as prana or chi. And it is the life force that is present in all of the universe and that lives in the sacral center. Now, remember, we all have access to this energy, to sacral energy, because we are all living, breathing beings here on Earth. But the sacral center, but the generator types have that center defined, so that means that is consistent energy within them. If it's undefined, it means that you can borrow it, but it's not necessarily yours. So it's something that you would have to be more aware of as a non-sacral type of how that energy functions, because it's borrowed energy, it's not yours. But for generator types, this energy is ever present, and it helps them do what they love, which is to work and to build. And that's what this energy is for. It's for building. It's for building businesses, lives, careers, communities, whatever it is you want to build. And to do that, it takes lots of energy. But that's what the generator is here to do. So the generator type has this enveloping, embracing aura. That means that it's designed to respond to life because it's going to be attracting things to it, things that would require energy from the generator, be it a project, person, whatever, requires that generator energy in this physical realm to build something, right? So the generator has the ability to respond to that through the sacral response, which is that yes or no. We've talked about sacral response a lot here on the podcast, and most of us that are generator types, well, all of us I should say, but most generator types, we are operating and using that sacral response incorrectly because really we're acting on conditioned behaviors and beliefs, things that we have been taught to think or to do. And, it's just common that we are conditioned to listen to the mind and not to the sacral response. As generators, we do tend to forget that we have this sacral response to guide us to what it is we need to do or what we want to do. And so life is constantly bringing us new opportunities and new things to respond to. And that's how a generator is supposed to move through life. We're supposed to maybe be inspired, have the ideas of what they would like to do or things they may be interested. However, we're not meant to really pursue that until the world shows us something outside of ourselves to respond to. And then the sacral gets to answer yes or no. So generators are not supposed to initiate their plans. They're supposed to respond. They can be inspired and then have that inspiration be shown to them through a path of opportunities coming to them if it's a yes or a no, that this is the right direction to go, if that makes sense. Because if they are moving through life, following their sacral response, responding thing to thing to thing, and they are using it correctly, they're going to be led in the right direction. And so one thing that doesn't necessarily get talked about a lot when it comes to following the sacral response is what happens when a generator gets stuck or feels stuck. And if you're a generator type, you probably know what I mean. That stuck feeling of, I must be doing something wrong. I don't know what's going on. I need to do something now. If I don't do something, it's all going to go away. I have to make a decision, right? Now, all these things, all these ideas, all these thoughts, this is an area or a space that all generators come to from time to time called the plateau. The plateau serves a couple of different purposes, well, at least two different purposes. So the plateau occurs because a generator has a stair-step learning process, meaning it's not a straight line up in progress and in mastery. It's a surge in mastery and learning, right? So a generator may see something, or they're interested in learning about something or accomplishing something or a project or whatever, and the sacral responds yes. And they're all in, right? There's so much energy there and there's so much activity. They're really engaged. Things keep showing up. They keep getting that sacral response of yes. And they just dive head in because, remember, they're builders. They're here to master what it means to build a life, but they also are masters of their craft or whatever chosen thing that they want to build, whether it be a family or a marriage or a singing career or even bookshelves, literally, like whatever they want to do. If they are following that clear yes sacral response, the next steps will always be revealed. But there's the plateau. So there's the surge, and then there's a lot of, things happening, and then it just kind of stops. There's like this dead space. It's a plateau. If you're a generator, you know what this feels like. It feels awful, really. I mean, let's be honest about it. We could, try to put a lot of positive thoughts to it up front, but, let's be real here. It doesn't feel good, right? For me, I think one of the reasons I'm addressing this right now and talking about this right now is that I feel like I may be in a bit of a plateau. I mean, at this point right now, I'm not really sure what it's all about. I do feel a little bit of lack of momentum, so to speak, and kind of in this space where I am waiting to see what it is I want to do next. So I'm just following where to be led. And this is what I was led to talk about today. So that being said, there is this space, this plateau space. And so what is this space for, and why does it happen to all generators? Well, the space, when the plateau shows up, usually it's recognized by a sense of frustration, because that is the not self theme of the generator is frustration. It's like when a generator is good and things are buzzing and they're following their strategy and everything's good, they're feeling aligned. Satisfaction is their emotional theme. And that's what they're looking for, is that sense of satisfaction all the time, which is why they could be, operating from conditioned behaviors of feeling they have to push and initiate because they want to feel satisfied, and they're not feeling satisfied because things aren't showing up and it's not going their way. On the flip side of that satisfaction is the frustration, the not self. And we talk about that a lot, this frustration coming from not being aligned, not following strategy, meaning that you're not necessarily following the sacral response to guide you to the correct path. But there's also frustration, this lack of momentum that occurs on the plateau. And during this lack of momentum, this plateau, this is where the mind wants to get involved in the generator's process, because the mind will start telling you all sorts of stories, right? Like you're doing the wrong thing, you're on the wrong path, you're not good enough at this, you don't know what you're doing, it's not going to work out, you should try something different, maybe you should just push through. It's obviously something blocking you. You just need to push past that. I mean, there's a lot that the mind will get involved with and try to tell you about what you're doing wrong, trying to convince you to take action. But that's the last thing that the generator needs to do in this space. When the generator is in a plateau, the last thing they need to do is take action. Because when they do try to force through the lack of momentum on a plateau, they could try to force things to happen, which then has the generator going against their sacral response and using energy that they might not have access to right now, because again, the sacral is not engaged. They're just pushing, which can lead to burnout, failed projects, things not working out, or getting yourself involved in things that you have a hard time getting yourself out of. Or the other option is that in that dead zone, that space, that plateau, is that not feeling that forward momentum is to convince yourself that you're on the wrong path. And so they quit. And this is what happens to many generators, myself included, over a lifetime of not really understanding the plateau space, feeling that they've made a wrong choice, that they're on the wrong path, and they need to quit and do something else. So what I want to encourage you today is to look at and learn and explore it as a different way of looking at these plateaus and these quote unquote stuck areas. So plateaus occur because of that stair-step learning curve that generators have. There's a time where the energy, the generator is gathering strength, is one way to put it. So in order to surge forward and in order to gain momentum, there has to be this kind of downtime where the generator gathers that energy again and waits for the next thing to respond to so that they can surge and they can get up to that next level of mastery. So in this plateau space, they are to wait to respond. And most generators, myself included, don't like to hear that. But that's really what it's there for, because then the generator can be very clear on if they're on the right path based on how they respond to things that are coming their way during this plateau. This way, the generator has the opportunity to assess if they've gone the right direction, and if so, they're able to follow their sacral response to the next correct step. Or in this plateau space, if they have gone a certain direction, the plateau gives them a time, like I said, to assess if this is the right direction or if it's a good time to actually quit. Because sometimes generators do need to quit. It's just because you learn one thing and you know one thing and you're interested in one thing doesn't mean that you always have to go that direction, right? So let's take a case study here, sort of. What comes to mind is my son as a kid. He's a generator, and when he was real little, he always talked about wanting to play guitar for the longest time. He wanted to learn how, but he was young, and my friend's husband taught guitar, and she told me he didn't take students until they're at least 10 because then they would, be able to practice when they needed to, not just during their lessons. So when the time was right for him to play guitar, when he got to be 10, he was, he wanted to take the lessons. So he committed to it. He went to the lessons once a week. He did what his instructor told him to do, and he dabbled around in it. He practiced. He did all the things that he was supposed to for about a year or so. And I should also point out he's a 3/5. He's a Taurus. He's a little stubborn, but he does need to kind of dabble, figure things out on his own. So after about a year or so of lessons, he just plateaued. He sort of lost interest all of a sudden. He didn't progress anymore. The momentum wasn't there anymore. And his instructor was telling me, he really has a talent for this, but he's just stopped committing to it. He's just really dug his heels in and is not really going or progressing even further. And he wasn't really sure what was happening. Because if he was going to get better at playing guitar, he was going to have to practice, and he didn't want to do it. So he just stopped, and we would talk to him, and like I said, he's very stubborn. He just wasn't interested, and we couldn't figure out what happened, why he suddenly lost interest. So as I look back on it, and he and I, none of us knowing about sacral response, I think he may have entered into the guitar lessons from a incorrect position. Let me explain. He's also an emotional generator. So he, I think when he was younger, was excited by the idea of playing guitar. And I think he saw that we got excited by the idea of him playing guitar, but he had to wait. And I think in his young childlike way of wanting to fulfill, or make us happy because he saw it made us excited for him to be interested in it, that, he just kept saying yes to it. So that when the time came and it's like, okay, now you're old enough. I mean, we even bought him an electric guitar, small, little electric guitar on eBay before he even started lessons. And so it was kind of like he had put the ball into motion a while ago. And I think he, at this point, was ambivalent about it, but he was also curious. But I'm not so sure his sacral was lit up. I don't think his heart was in it. And so we got him into it, and he committed to it for a while. But then when he hit that plateau and it just wasn't happening anymore, he couldn't force himself past that sacral response anymore. And he just wasn't into it. And he stuck true to what he wanted, which was a hard no, because he had the time to stop and really evaluate if he wanted to continue. And he didn't, and he dropped it. And we were more disappointed than he was, because I know he could have been good at it, but he trusted himself and knew that this was not something he wanted to use his energy on anymore. It wasn't there for him. And so the plateau space for him gave him the opportunity to step back and say, no, this isn't for me. Now, let's say this was the right path for him when he hit that plateau and he, lost interest for a little bit. If he'd had the space to take a break for a month or maybe even a year, get a little bit older, if guitar was something he was really wanting to do, when he responded again to the opportunity of taking lessons or just maybe teaching himself or playing with guitar, if his sacral then responded in the affirmative, if he decided to pick it back up, he would probably have a surge in his skill level, his ability, because it gave him that time to really commit to it and know that this was right for him, so that when he got back into it, it would have, his skill level probably would have improved a little bit quicker because he was recommitting and he was on the right path. So that's one way of looking at it. Excuse me. Another way to look at the plateau is, I think, of more a bit of what has happened to me in my lifetime as I look back and can now see the stair-step pattern in my life. Getting that, response to something that really lights me up and feeling that momentum that, yes, this is something I'm really interested in, learning about it, knowing about it, gaining mastery over it, and then the plateau hits. I have quit things because I figure, well, there's no point. There's no momentum there anymore. But I've also started to see that really for me, these plateau areas have been a way of collecting new skills. So I would say overall, as I look back at my life path, and the trajectory has always been in the pursuit of understanding myself, of understanding other people, of learning and how the world works, really, how people work. And I've always been fascinated with, the whole mysticism, spirituality, energy, all of those things. I've always had a little tinge of that somewhere, no matter what I was doing. And it's, taken many different routes for me. When I was younger, before I understood a lot of this stuff, I just, as far as actual work, putting food on the table went, I just did work that I could do, that I was physically able to do, that didn't take, a whole lot of headspace, because there wasn't really anything out there that interested me as a career path. Because what I was interested in, this is in the late 80s, early 90s, there wasn't a whole lot out there for jobs, let's say, that interest me and what there is now. It's amazing to think about what you can create a job out of, or income, I should say, out of, based on what lights you up. It's really incredible. But back then, when I needed to work, I would just work. I waited tables. That was fine. And that works for a lot of generators, because you work in the world doesn't always have to be the job that you're doing to pay the bills. You could just be doing a job that helps you gain the things you want in life, the resources you need, and at the same time, have a hobby or a passion or some kind of pursuit that fills you up, and in a way that a job just can't do. But you have both, and you feel satisfied. You have your job, creates money, and you have a passion that, really fills you up. Or it could be both. Hopefully you could combine the two to get the resources you need. That's what I hope to help people with here eventually. So as I collected skills over the years, I quite often felt like a bit of a flake, or an untethered balloon, sort of, following things that, that sparkly item syndrome, whatever they call it. I forget what they call it. Shiny object syndrome. That's what it's called. Not sparkly. And I'm not a manifesting generator, but I definitely had lots of different interests. And so I would kind of, go deep on one thing and see where it would lead me. When I would get interested in something, I would go really deep. It would totally absorb me, still does. It will literally consume me. I'm also a line 1. So I want to know everything about what it is I'm interested in. Can't get enough of it. I want to understand it fully, get to the bottom of it. I mean, it will take up all of my headspace, really. And then sometimes it'll just stop. So when I go back and look at what got me here, all the things that showed up that I was interested in, at first it was the yoga is what really kicked it off into full gear. That would be in my early 30s. I just wanted to do yoga all the time. It literally hit the biggest spark in me that really anything had in my life, other than meeting my husband and, my family. But this is something that really lit me up, and I wanted to do yoga all the time. I wanted to be at yoga classes. I thought I wanted to teach yoga. I wanted to talk about yoga, hang out with yogis, then throw meditation in there, learning about the spiritual science of yoga, the chakras, energy work, all of it. And of course, I said I'd already been interested in astrology and other things, and I wanted to know about that. And then I started learning about the energy of everything and how it's all connected. So I thought I wanted to be some type of energy healer. And everything that I learned about and that became new to me, I always put it in the context that I had to make it a job. I mean, maybe you do that too. I don't know. But I would learn so much that I would almost go overboard. I would take in too much. Maybe that's my line 1. And my conscious son, being in gate 14, is very focused on finding work that lights me up. So it's kind of really baked into my unique design. But I think there's a lot of you that can relate to that. So I would learn everything I could, and then I would just plateau. I would just stop doing things. The momentum wouldn't be there. I wouldn't want to hang out as much at the yoga studio. I wouldn't want to do as much. I would just kind of get blah. And I'd always wonder, I mean, not so much with yoga. I did have to push myself through because there were times I felt like not going all the time and learning, but I had a lot of conditioning in my head that I had to be actively participating, that if I didn't go, I would drop out of like my friend group and all this other stuff. So there were other things getting involved instead of my sacral. And I did push myself a little bit too hard in that regard. I was, out there doing pretty vigorous, pretty challenging vinyasa yoga 5 to 6 days a week and never really giving my body a break when everybody thinks, you could do yoga all the time, but if you are not recuperating, if you're pushing yourself too hard, even that can be a little detrimental, but we all learn as we go. So when I hit a plateau spot, it really allows a new opportunity, new possibilities to come in. And for me, it feels like I'm kind of following a new pursuit. So when this plateau occurs, I always thought that maybe I was following a new pursuit, but now I see that I was just responding to the next thing that was adding on to what I had already been learning, because what I was building was unique to me. There wasn't a work or a job description out there, anything that fit me. And so I just kept following things that lit me up. So first it was yoga and meditation, and then it was energy work, and then it was Reiki healing. And at the same time, I was learning skills as a jewelry artist. I was learning how to design and how to create, and I kept building my skills there. And then I started learning more about crystals, and then it would go back to energy work along these plateaus, or might have been a shift from one direction to another, but I didn't always give everything up completely. I would just kind of shift focus during the plateaus, if that makes sense. But if it was something I was really into, I would come back to it. So let me get a little more clear about that. So, because that maybe was confusing. It makes sense in my head, but maybe not to you. So if we talk about just the jewelry, for instance, I started making jewelry when my kids were my daughter, Haley, who was a baby. And I just really wanted to learn how to make jewelry because I liked wearing jewelry. I grew up in the 80s. I had all the stacked bracelets all the way up and down my arm, just like Madonna. And so I was really into just, meaningful jewelry, cool jewelry, something different. And I wanted to learn how to do that. And I was just making things, pretty things with glass beads and some gemstones, not that much because they were a little more expensive, but just a little bit. And it was really fun, and I was learning, and I dabbled, and I was good at it. I was coming up with, interesting designs, and people thought they were pretty. And then it kind of slowed down a little bit. I just kind of lost my momentum, and I also had a second child, so I was kind of busy because this was, before yoga. But then when yoga did show up in my life, and I started learning more about the energy of things, I started learning about the chakra system and the human energy system, and I started learning about different stones and gemstones and how they correlated to different energy centers in the body and how they could affect them and everything. And that world started to open up to me, and I started thinking, I should make things with gemstones and crystals because they can hold energy, and glass and other things don't hold energy. So then I thought, I need to learn more about crystals and energy, and I kind of stopped making jewelry as much. I was focused more on the other aspect of things. Everything just kind of went on hold a little bit. So then when I learned more about the crystals and the energy and the chakras and all that stuff, it would come back around. Something would show up. Maybe somebody asked me to make them something, or they wanted something that was yoga inspired, or, had a correlation to the chakra system. And that definitely lit something up in me that was like, yes, I have the jewelry making skills. I now have the yoga skills. I now have the knowledge about chakras. And now I know about gemstones and energy. So yeah, this is really cool. So there was something new to respond to. Even though I would kind of plateau in one direction, I would go another direction, and then it would come back to me, if that makes sense. So then in another plateau, things slowed down again, and with the jewelry, the interest kind of waned there for a little bit, and then Reiki entered the picture, and becoming a Reiki master, I went through the process of doing that for a couple years. And I thought that's what I was going to do. That, jewelry was nice, but it wasn't as meaningful as being like an actual Reiki master and teaching people and learning how to initiate people and all this stuff. I found that fascinating. But then once I got through all those levels, I kind of plateaued on the Reiki too. I just didn't know what to do with it after that point. Things just weren't happening with me. And so something showed up that showed me that I could infuse the jewelry with Reiki. And so that became a new thing. So I hope you see what I'm saying here, that I don't want to have to go through my whole history of everything I've ever done here. I don't want to bore you with that. But I can see now that these areas where I thought I was getting confused, or I thought I was abandoning one thing for another, or looking a little bit like I didn't know what I'm doing. Well, the truth was I didn't know what I'm doing, because as a generator, we're not really supposed to know what it is that's coming next and what we're doing. We're just supposed to be responding. And that's exactly what I did. And so, I was selling jewelry. I was trying to work on maybe building some sort of Reiki practice. But at the time, the area I live in wasn't really open to it. Like face to face, people right here in my community were not really open to what it was I was interested in. And so I had to figure out how to find customers, and that got me into the online space with the online store for my jewelry, and finding the people through wholesale connections and whatnot that would appreciate this yoga inspired Reiki infused jewelry. And that led me into the online space, which then got me focused in a whole new expansive direction of what could I do online. And that gets me really excited. And I think a lot of it for me is I just get very excited about ideas of how to do business and how you could do it in different ways. And you could take anything and make something of it. I get excited about that. But anyways, so a lot of the jewelry and the Reiki and all that stuff just kind of took a back seat to going online and building online. And I've been in that space for a while now of how to, build an online business to help you do what it is you want to do. Now, there have been times in the plateaus where I have had the opportunity to then step back from something like my son did and see that there was an area that I had committed to that it wasn't a match for me anymore. And the plateau gave me the opportunity to assess that and step back, and gave me something to respond to, that when it showed up and I recognized, I could have a clearer response, because there was this, lack of momentum. I was able to have a clearer response to if it was something I still wanted to continue or not. And where that most recently clearly showed up for me was in the yoga space, because, just a couple years ago, I was teaching yoga at local studio, and it was just once a week, but it was something I always thought I had been working towards and I wanted to do, that I was afraid to do because, I don't look like a quote unquote normal yoga teacher. I had been doing yoga at that point for over 15 years and I knew what I was doing, but I never felt like I could teach yoga. And so I was given the opportunity to do it, and I did it for about a year or so. And this is around pandemic time, but anyways, the point is, it got to a point where I lost my energy for it. I hit a plateau with it. It was something I had always been building towards or so I thought, with all my years of practice and study, and I was given the opportunity to certify. That came to me and I said yes, and I wanted to do that. And then I did it. And it wasn't really that fulfilling for me. It became more of something that I started to dread doing once a week, which I don't know why. I just did. It just happened. And I probably would have kept doing it, but in this space of not feeling the enthusiasm for it, things slowing down, the momentum no longer there, something occurred that gave me the real opportunity to respond to yes or no. Is this something I really want to do? And it was a no. I was brought to a clear no. And shortly after that, it was easier for me to exit that situation cleanly. I didn't have to flat out quit it. Just me and the studio owner came to the understanding it wasn't going to work anymore, and everybody was fine. It wasn't a messy ending. So that plateau gave me the chance to really assess if it was something I wanted to do, and it was a no, and it gave me a time to step away, which is really important for generators because we have this energy that can push through and can keep doing for way longer than it should. And especially if you have, like I do, gate 29, gate of commitment, that you say yes to things. It's very hard to extricate yourself from things you have committed to that you may not have entered into in the right space. So I'm now grateful for that time and that plateau and energy because it gave me the opportunity to step back. And that's really important for generators too. So there's another good use for that plateau there for you. So really I can see now that all these places where I thought nothing was happening in my life, I've gotten comfortable with knowing that these are areas where I will reach a certain point. I've done what I need to do, and then I just need to chill. If I feel like the energy's not there, the last thing I need or you need to do as a generator is to keep pushing through and try to make things happen. And so for right now, it makes me curious about this plateau space I feel myself in, because I feel it in my bones that human design is a culmination of all these things that I have been learning, and they've been bringing me to this point. But I'm also feeling a pause right now in momentum that is allowing me to, I think, see other things I'm interested in as well, and how it's all going to tie back to where I go from here. And so if I were operating without this knowledge, I would be seriously questioning the work I'm doing now, if it's the right work or not. But I don't. I know that I am committed to this podcast, and I love this podcast, and I love what we have built, and I love working with my daughter. And I think we've done a lot in this space in the year or so we've been here. We've been helping people understand the system better, and that's good. But we've been also talking about, well, what else can we do with the podcast? What format can it take? Who can we bring in? What do we want to talk about? It's been sort of a how-to thing, and I think we will always have that teaching component, but we also just feel the need to expand the conversation more. And so we're kind of open to that right now and seeing what comes up as I sit in this plateau space of wondering what's next. Because now when I hit a plateau, I'm more aware of what's happening outside of myself and around me. I give myself a little more grace to just pause and not freak out so much and wonder if I'm doing the right thing or if I'm on the right path. If I feel that there's no momentum, I can feel a lot of momentum and then it kind of cools. Now it's a little bit exciting because I know, okay, it's a time to just relax a little bit. I'm trusting in the universe and knowing that it's always the right time. No matter what I'm doing, I'm in the right space at the right time. That's a big thing for me. But also, just like an arrow has to be pulled back in order to shoot itself forward, that's where I see the plateau space now is I'm going to be shooting forward, and it's giving me the time and the space to gather what I need for that next step. And I find that to be incredibly exciting. And I hope that through this episode, this is what lands you in that space too, of knowing that you're in the right place. There's nothing you need to force or do. You just have to get comfortable in the almost void and just wait and see what comes up, and then allow your sacral to respond for you. What is the next right step? Because honestly, if we didn't have these pauses, we could just keep barreling down the wrong road for a lifetime and, just never have the chance to just pause and wait and see where to go next. So if you perhaps find yourself in this space right now, it's a good time to ask yourself, okay, so where have I been putting my attention, and how do I feel about it? Honestly, like, even if it's something I felt that was really important to me, if I'm not feeling momentum now, is this something I want to give up? Is this something I want to let go? Or is it just a pause and a wait and see what happens next, where I'm going to be guided to take this thing that I am working on or that I love and be open to a new direction that perhaps it wants to take you. So that's my thoughts on plateaus, and I hope that's really helped you today. And now we come to the portion that Haley's going to miss this week, but now we're going to dig into the incarnation cross of the week. And today we have come up with the left angle cross of education 2. And this is also known in quantum human design as the left angle cross of originality 2. And it consists of the conscious sun and earth gates in gate conscious sun 11, conscious earth 12. And then on the unconscious side, we have the sun in gate 46 and the earth in gate 25. And so here's a brief synopsis about the incarnation cross of education. Left angle cross of education 2. So, if you have this cross, your purpose is to be a spiritual teacher and leader, inspiring people to fully embrace their divine connection to Source. You ignite the spark within them, guiding them towards higher alignment with Source and greater well-being. You help them remember their innate divinity and provide the ideas and inspiration needed to break free from limitations, release blocks, and transform cycles of pain. Together, you uncover new potentials and possibilities. Effective communication here is key. By promoting the value of education, you encourage others to enhance their articulation and vocabulary, enabling them to share their authentic selves with the world. So, embrace your role as a guide and a catalyst, and inspire others to embrace their spiritual essence and live a life of limitless possibilities. How you like that? Sounds pretty good, right? So that means we have come to the end of yet another episode. And as always, I really, really appreciate y'all being here and listening to me. And as we navigate this plateau, as I navigate this plateau, I'm really excited to see what's going to show up next. You never know. So one thing you can count on is I will be here again next week, bringing you new content. So again, I appreciate you being here, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much. Take care. Well, you made it all the way to the end of today's episode, so you must have liked what you heard. If you did, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode, and perhaps leave us a good review. And if you know someone who wants to dig into all things human design with us, make sure you share the Human Design Hive podcast with them. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.